When Lancia unveiled the Beta Monte Carlo at the 1975 Geneva Motor Show, it looked like a miniature Ferrari. Designed by Paolo Martin at Pininfarina with sharp angles and vintage Ferrari design elements. Engineered by Dr. Renato Sconfienza, who previously engineered the Ferrari Daytona, BB512, and later the Testarossa, the Monte Carlo promised Italian exotic appeal at accessible pricing. This was the first production car entirely designed, engineered, and manufactured by Pininfarina at their Turin works. The mid-engine layout suggested supercar handling. The Lancia badge carried prestige. Reality delivered catastrophic brake failures so severe that production was completely suspended for 2 years, rust so bad that Lancia bought back and scrapped every Beta sold in the United Kingdom from 1976 to 1979, and United States market performance so weak that Road and Track called it a Scorpion without its stinger. The Monte Carlo used a Lampredi inline 4-cylinder twin-cam engine, displacing 1,995 cubic centimeters, or 2.0 liters. It produced 118 horsepower at 6,000 revolutions per minute, and 126 pound-feet, or 171 Newton-meters of torque at 3,400 revolutions per minute. The naturally aspirated engine sent power through a 5-speed manual transaxle to the rear wheels in a mid-engine layout. Weight came in at 1,040 kilograms, or 2,293 pounds. Performance figures showed 0 to 62 miles per hour in 9.3 seconds, and a top speed of 118 miles per hour, or 190 kilometers per hour. Those numbers were mediocre for a mid-engine sports car in 1975. The United States market received a neutered version sold as the Lancia Scorpion from 1976 to 1977, because Chevrolet owned the Monte Carlo name. Emissions regulations forced displacement down to 1,756 cubic centimeters, with compression ratio reduced to 8.1 to 1. Power dropped to just 81 horsepower, a 32.5% reduction versus the European version. Less aggressive camshaft profiles, a smaller carburetor, and emissions equipment strangled performance. Federal safety requirements added large 5-mile-per-hour impact bumpers and 130 pounds, or 59 kilograms, of weight. Suspension was modified with taller springs to meet United States height requirements, increasing bump steer and reducing caster, which damaged handling. The Scorpion was objectively inferior to the Monte Carlo in every measurable way. Contemporary testers were not kind. Road and Track complained of severe front locking and 37% fade, describing the Scorpion as having engine noise as a major complaint. Motor Magazine noted easy front-wheel lockup when approaching corners and criticized the overboosted braking system. The brakes used a powerful servo acting only on the front wheels, a critical design flaw. Front wheels locked easily, especially in wet conditions, creating dangerous handling. The problem was so severe that Lancia completely halted production in 1978. For 2 years, no Monte Carlos were built, while engineers scrambled to address safety defects. The solution was crude. When the Series 2 Monte Carlo launched in 1980, engineers had simply removed the brake servo entirely. Larger brake rotors were fitted, but drivers now had to apply significantly greater pedal force than any contemporary car. Motorsport magazine described the Series 2 Monte Carlo in December 1981 as something of a disappointment with suspect brakes even after the redesign. The fix was arguably worse than the problem. No modern car required that much physical effort to stop. Rust was the other disaster. Fiat had sourced cheap Russian steel for cost savings. The steel rusted catastrophically when exposed to moisture. The Monte Carlo developed a reputation as a rust bucket. Sills, rear strut turrets, bonnets, and floor pans were moisture traps. The rear crossmember was too thin and prone to corrosion and failure. Many examples showed rust veins beneath paint within the first year. Some cars rusted straight from showrooms with pinholing visible on new vehicles. Floor pan rust caused early demise for many examples. The rust problem became part of the broader beta scandal. In 1980, Lancia UK launched an unprecedented buyback campaign, offering to purchase every single beta sold from 1976 to 1979. The bought-back cars were scrapped, not resold. This was an admission of catastrophic quality failure. The Montecarlo, originally marketed as the Lancia Beta Montecarlo, suffered guilt by association. For the 1980 relaunch, Lancia dropped the beta prefix entirely, calling it simply Lancia Montecarlo to distance from the scandal. The damage was done. The bitter irony is that the racing version succeeded spectacularly. The Lancia 037 Rally, based on the Monte Carlo platform, won the 1983 World Rally Constructors' Championship. Walter Röhrl finished second in the Drivers' Championship. The 037 was the last rear-wheel drive car to win the WRC Constructors' title, a record standing over 40 years. It also won European and Italian rally championships and competed successfully against four-wheel drive Audi Quattros. The 037 proved the mid-engine chassis concept was excellent. Proper engineering and quality control without cost-cutting compromises created a championship-winning race car. The road car received cheap materials, inadequate brake development, catastrophic rust from cost-cutting steel choices, and poor quality control. At approximately $10,000 new in 1976 to 1977, the Scorpion competed against the Datsun 280Z with more power and better reliability, the Porsche 914 with similar concept, but better execution, and even the Fiat X1/9 from the same corporate family, with similar performance at lower cost. Current values range from $10,000 to $20,000, despite extreme rarity, reflecting that collector interest is based on oddity status rather than desirability. The Monte Carlo and Scorpion promised Pininfarina elegance, Ferrari-like styling, exotic mid-engine handling, and Italian craftsmanship. They delivered production halted for 2 years due to dangerous brakes, rust so catastrophic the manufacturer bought back and scrapped entire model lines, 81 horsepower in the United States market that road and track mocked, and reliability nightmares. The racing version won world championships, while the road car bankrupted customer confidence. That gap between promise and reality is the definition of overhype. Maserati did something in 1981 that almost nobody saw coming. In a small, sober coupe, they hid 2 turbochargers, a new 3-valve head, and a plan to beat taxes and Ferrari. It launched in Modena and sold big. It also broke hearts, wallets, and more than a few fuse boxes. Alejandro de Tomaso wanted an Italian BMW 3 Series. In autumn 1978, he greenlit a compact front-engine, rear-drive coupe that regular professionals could buy. The key was Italy's tax law. Over 2.0 liters meant a 38% tax. Under 2.0 liters meant 19%. So Maserati built a 1,996 cubic centimeter V6 and let turbochargers do the heavy lifting. Engineer Giordano Casarini tried one turbo between the cylinder banks. It cooked everything nearby. The fix was elegant. 2 smaller IHI units, 1 per bank, in parallel. Spool faster, less lag, and, without planning for it, history's first twin-turbo production car. 3 valves per cylinder and Nicosil-coated wet sleeves added to the surprise. On December 14, 1981, at Via Ciro Menotti in Modena, the Biturbo met the world. Early figures: about 180 horsepower, 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 7.2 seconds, and a top speed around 135 miles per hour, or 217 kilometers per hour. In a modest two-door 2+2, that was eyebrow-raising. The idea spread across an entire family. Italy got the 2.0-liter carbureted at first, then fuel injected by 1987. Export models used 2.5 liters. From 1989, a 2.8-liter version reached 225 horsepower in North America and about 247 horsepower in Europe. Early oil-cooled turbos struggled. Water-cooled center sections arrived in 1986 and helped a lot. Variants became a maze. The Biturbo S of 1983 added twin intercoolers and more power. Marcello Gandini softened the styling for the late 1980s, birthing the 222 series, 1,156 units, and the rare 228, 469 units. Four-door sedans followed, 420, 422, and the 430 line with 995 total, including a scarce 434 valve run of 291. The Spider convertible, 3,076 units, sat on a shortened chassis. The Carif, 220 units, took that short wheelbase and turned the boost up. December 1990 brought the Racing, a 2.0-liter screamer that claimed the title of most powerful 2.0-liter production car, with a top speed near 160 miles per hour, or about 257 kilometers per hour. Above it all sat the Shamal, 369 units. Gandini's muscular flagship with a 3.2-liter twin-turbo V8 and those signature rear-wheel arches. The Ghibli II, 2,337 units, extended the platform into the 1990s, and the Ghibli Cup added a tiny, rare batch of 60, plus 15 on request. Under the skin sat solid ideas: unibody steel, independent suspension all around, disc brakes on every corner, rack and pinion steering, and a 5-speed manual with an optional 3-speed automatic. The baseline coupe weighed roughly 1,089 kilograms. Inside, you got leather, wood trim, full instruments, and the Trident everywhere. Outside you got restraint, which mattered in tense, late 1970s Italy, when flashy cars could attract the wrong attention. Culturally, the Biturbo did something wild. It beat Ferrari. The Ferrari F40 arrived in 1987 with twin turbos, and the Ferrari 288 GTO Evoluzione prototypes came later. But Maserati's production first was in 1981. Meanwhile, the Porsche 911 Turbo still used a single turbo in that era. The Biturbo even served as the Italian presidential car, a public nod to the program. Sales took off, more than 40,000 across the family, close to 45 variants total. In the United States, 1984 peaked at 2,023 units. Price? About $37,000, right in BMW 325 money. Then the problems arrived. Owners complained about smoking turbos, a fragile fuse box, cracking plastics, rust on early non-galvanized shells, overheating, electrical gremlins, and tricky carburetor setups. The timing belt needed timely replacement. Many skipped it, with expensive results. One summary line still stings: everything that could leak, burn, snap, or rupture did so. Dealers struggled to service complex twin-turbo systems. Repair bills were exotic, but the buyer base was not. By 1990, the United States tally limped to about 5,000 cumulative, just 240 that year, and Maserati withdrew from the market. A high-profile side quest with Lee Iacocca produced the Chrysler TC by Maserati, which famously cost Chrysler about $600 million and helped nobody's reputation. Motorsport did not save the story. Alejandro de Tomaso did not want racing to distract the company. Attempts in the World Touring Car Championship in 1987, then the European Touring Car Championship in 1988 with the Marlboro Conquista effort, did not change the narrative. A few cars ran in touring and rally events, but there was no halo of victory. Yet the legacy is big. From 1981 to 1997, every Maserati model traced back to this architecture. All the Biturbo variants, 222, 228, the four-door lines, Carif, Racing, Shamal, Ghibli II, and even Quattroporte 4. The twin-turbo layout proved that two small units could cut lag. The small engine plus boost formula became industry standard. The Biturbo is a cautionary tale about rushing quality, and also the template many later cars quietly followed. Today, values flip the original pitch. An early Biturbo in good condition might average about $4,900, while a same-year BMW 325i convertible might sit around $16,300. The Shamal can fetch far more. Enthusiasts now see the Biturbo as flawed, fascinating, and, when maintained, surprisingly faithful. It was the affordable exotic with turbo power nobody expected. It saved Maserati and scarred it, and it changed how fast small engines make big numbers. In December 1986, the first pilot car rolled off a unique production line in Lansing, Michigan. This was not your typical General Motors assembly plant. Workers moved in specialized teams from station to station, carefully hand-building each vehicle while robots shuttled the cars between workstations. When they finished, they signed their names on a craftsman log, taking personal responsibility for their work. This was the Reatta Craft Center, and it existed to build one of the most ambitious American cars of the decade. The Buick Reatta was first conceived in the early 1980s as Buick's answer to a problem. The brand had no two-seat personal luxury car to compete against the Mercedes-Benz 380 SL Roadster. They looked back to the 1955 to 1957 Ford Thunderbird for inspiration, envisioning a modern American Grand Tourer that would elevate the entire Buick brand. The car was originally planned for a 1983 launch as an '84 model, but GM's massive reorganization delayed everything by more than 4 years. The company folded 5 divisional marketing and engineering divisions into 2 supergroups, BOC and CPC, creating chaos that pushed the Reatta back repeatedly. When series production finally began in January 1988, the Reatta offered something remarkable. It rode on a shortened version of the GM-E platform shared with the 7th-generation Buick Riviera, configured as a transverse front-engine, front-wheel drive two-seater. Under the hood sat the LN3 3.8-liter V6, one of the first GM engines with port fuel injection, and a counter-rotating balance shaft for exceptional smoothness. Early models made 165 horsepower and 210 pound-feet of torque, though later production bumped that to 170 horsepower and 220 pound-feet. The car managed 0 to 60 miles per hour or 0 to 97 kilometers per hour in 9.0 seconds, which was not spectacular, but the Reatta was never about raw speed. The real innovation sat on the dashboard. The 1988 and 1989 Reattas featured an electronic control center touchscreen, making it only the second car ever to offer this technology after the 1986 Buick Riviera. This was not a modern capacitive screen. Instead, it used rows of invisible mylar switches that detected pressure. The display even heated up when you touched the door handle, reducing startup delay. You could control radio and climate functions, set date reminders, access the trip computer, program an overspeed alarm, and even run diagnostics on the vehicle's electronic systems and sensors. There was a 5-band audio equalizer, stereo balancing, one-touch windshield defrost, and climate control showing internal and external temperatures with an animated digital fan. This was technology decades ahead of its time. But buyers found it confusing. The finicky touchscreen frustrated customers who just wanted to change the radio station without navigating menus. Buick discontinued it after 1989, fitting conventional controls to later models. This decision reflected a larger problem. The Reatta was the right car at the wrong time. Production numbers tell the story. Buick projected 20,000 units annually, but never came close. The 1988 model year, in 1989, the peak came in 1990, which included the introduction of a convertible body style alongside the original coupe. Then, in 1991, the final year, total production across all 4 years reached. Of those, 19,314 were coupes and just 2,437 were convertibles. The 1991 convertible shares are especially rare, with only 305 built, making them some of the most uncommon modern Buicks. The original 1988 retail price was $25,000, equivalent to $66,467 in 2024 dollars. You got 4-wheel independent suspension, 4-wheel disc brakes with ABS, and genuinely high build quality thanks to that hand assembly process. Each vehicle received thorough inspection at multiple stations. Premium materials filled the cabin. This was a real luxury grand tourer, not a parts bin special. So why is the Reatta underrated? It represented one of GM's last attempts at a true hand-built luxury car before automation dominated production. It featured advanced technology not fully appreciated at the time. The build quality was superior to typical GM products of that era. The unique styling has aged better than many contemporaries. And despite being rare, values have not reflected this collectability. Recent market trends show prices dropping 10% across the board despite 1980s nostalgia. You can find low-mileage examples for $19,500 to $20,000, while convertibles command approximately twice the price of coupes. Ferrari arrived at Geneva in 1984 with something nobody expected. After 40 years of worshipping high revs and natural aspiration, Maranello showed a twin-turbo car and called it a GTO. The message was simple and shocking. The future of speed would not breathe on its own, and Ferrari would lead it. Ferrari had long treated turbocharging like a party it would never attend. The company built dozens of naturally aspirated V12 engines and tuned them for linear power, instant response, and glorious noise. Engineers warned that turbo lag dulled the right foot, that throttle response became a puzzle, and that low-end torque killed the rising to redline drama that defined the badge. So why break the rule? By 1983, Enzo Ferrari heard from friends and buyers that sales were slipping and the lineup felt too gentle. Meanwhile, the 126C turbocharged Formula One program proved the point. A 1.5-liter V6 with increasing boost won the Constructors' Championship in 1982 and 1983. Power grew from the hundreds into 4 figures. Rival brands embraced forced induction. New Italian tax rules rewarded small displacement. Even Enzo agreed. It was time for what Michele Alboreto called cattiva cars again. Group B opened the door. The International Motorsport governing body required only 200 road cars plus 20 evolutions. Ferrari answered with the 288 GTO, named Gran Turismo Omologata, to match its mission. Production ran from 1984 to 1987 and totaled 272 cars, 200 to meet homologation, 72 more for top clients, with the final car gifted by Enzo to Niki Lauda. Just 32 reached North America. Ferrari had dabbled with one-turbo earlier. The 208 GTB Turbo of 1982 used a single K26 unit for Italy's tax rules. It made 220 horsepower and stayed local. The 288 GTO was different. This was turbocharging as a performance creed. It became the first twin-turbo Ferrari road car. the first mid-engine Ferrari with a longitudinal turbo V8, and the first time forced induction was the whole point. Under the deck sat a 90-degree, all-aluminum, 2.855-liter V8, turned longitudinal to equalize exhaust lengths. It breathed through twin IHI turbochargers, bare air-to-air intercoolers, and Weber-Marelli fuel injection. Compression sat at 7.6 to 1. Output was 395 horsepower at 7,000 revolutions per minute, and 496 newton-meters at 3,800 revolutions per minute, about 140 horsepower per liter. A 5-speed manual sent power to the rear wheels. Dry weight was 1,160 kilograms. Performance was blunt. 0 to 60 miles per hour took 4.8 to 5.0 seconds, which is 0 to 97 kilometers per hour. Top speed reached 189 miles per hour, or 304 kilometers per hour. The power-to-weight ratio was 341 horsepower per ton. At launch in 1984, it was the fastest production car on sale, until the Porsche 959 arrived. The core came from the 308 GTB, but the surgery was radical. Displacement was trimmed to 2.855 liters for Group B. The engine rotated from transverse to longitudinal. Twin turbos and intercoolers arrived. Power jumped from 240 horsepower in a 308 GTB to 395 horsepower in the 288 GTO. The wheelbase stretched by 200 millimeters. Most panels became molded fiberglass. The hood used Kevlar. The roof blended Kevlar and carbon fiber. Doors stayed steel to meet regulations and costs. You could spot it from a block away. Fender flares swelled over wider tires. Spoilers grew to keep it steady at big speed. Large flag mirrors stood proud. 4 driving lights flanked the grille. NASCAR ducts sliced air to brakes and engine bay. Many of these cues had been teased as early as 1977 by Pininfarina on a 308 GTB show car. Leonardo Fioravanti shaped the final look. Purposeful, compact, a little mean. The reveal in March 1984 caused a rush. Orders outpaced plans. And all 272 were spoken for before full production started. One hopeful buyer even paid 20,000 Swiss francs for a promise to buy car number 201 if it ever got built. Enzo's late career decision had struck a nerve. Then, tragedy changed the plan. In 1986, Henri Toivonen and Sergio Cresto died at the Tour de Corse. At Rally Portugal, Joaquim Santos crashed his Ford RS. 203 spectators were killed. Group B ended that year. The 288 GTO never turned a competitive wheel, but it did something larger. It founded Ferrari's modern supercar line. Nicola Materazzi, nicknamed Mr. Turbo, tied it all together. He joined Ferrari in 1979 for forced induction expertise, helped create the Formula One turbos, chose the longitudinal layout for equal runners, and then led the Ferrari F40. His approach made the 288 GTO feel angry, yet crisp, with lag pushed to the margins and character intact. The 288 GTO Evoluzione showed where it might have gone next. 5 were built with about 650 horsepower, wild aero, and serious weight cuts. Group B's end kept them off the grid, but their ideas fed directly into the F40. Rarity keeps the legend sharp. Only 272 exist, with values today commonly in the $2.50 to $4.2 million range, an average around $3.8 million in 2023. And notable sales such as chassis 47509 at $3.2 million. Surviving unmolested examples are coveted because some cars were crashed, modified, or stored poorly. Why did it shock the world? Because Ferrari broke its own code. It put twin turbos on a car wearing the sacred GTO badge, made it the fastest thing on the road, and proved that forced induction could feel utterly Ferrari. In the process, It saved the company's swagger and taught the brand how to build the future.